Welcome back, blurs and animation enthusiasts. Ready to delve into a vibrant world where pixels come to life and creativity knows no bounds. I'm your host, Terrence, and this is Blurred Out, your passport to the animated universe where STEM meets storytelling in the most colorful and captivating way. Today, we're not just talking about cartoons or immersing ourselves into magic animation with the special guests who've been paving the way for diversity and inclusion in the industry. Make sure you hit the like button, leave comments, and subscribe to the Blurred Out movement.
Confidence, yeah. It really shouldn't be no arguments, cause you're now viewing the greatest of all time, saying I can't get better, I promise.
I'm excited today to have Sam Goff, an animation industry recruiting early career outreach and DEIB and career development specialist. Join us today. Sam serves as the creative talent manager for Fourth Wall Management. She's been a pioneer in uplifting BIPOC talent in the animation industry. Welcome to Blurred Out, Sam.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So if you don't mind just starting off and tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from and how you got started in the industry.
Yeah, so I'm actually originally from LA. My whole family lives here, but when I was young, my mom's job relocated me out to Kansas. So I spent my school years out in suburban Kansas, and as soon as I graduated high school, came right back to the city that always had my heart. And I was an animation kid from jump, every little kid, loves watching cartoons, but I never kind of grew out of it. Instead, I became a huge anime nerd when I was in middle school, and I realized that this was actually a career field. This is a job somebody could do. And from that point forward, nobody could tell me different. And I was just doggedly going towards working in animation ever since. It took me a while, but I got there.
Yeah, and you're right. There are a lot of people who would love to work in this industry, which brings me to my question. So you've had experience with some really big players in the industry, DreamWorks and Netflix. How has that impacted your career, and how has it shaped your career trajectory?
I'm really fortunate to have always worked for major studios. A lot of people get started at smaller indie studios and then make their way up into the big studio system. Mm-hmm. But I got my first job at DreamWorks, and so it was really like a boot camp of learning. Because when you're in school, you learn how to make animation. You don't learn how animation gets made, if that makes sense. The studio system is such a specific thing. And so getting my first start at a place like that, I was able to understand and learn in the years that I worked in production, the nuances and the differences and the business side of how animation gets made, and understand the different puzzle pieces that all come together to make that final product.
Got it. So what are the puzzle pieces that help bring that together? Because I know nothing about animation.
How much time do we have? Let me put it to you this way. Have you ever watched the credits at the end of a movie that's either animated or has VFX animation in it?
Yeah. Yep.
You know how long those credits are?
It's very long, yeah.
It's very long.
Yeah. Usually don't get all the way through it, so all right.
Right, exactly. Unless it's a Marvel movie and you're waiting for that.
You're waiting for the
credit scene, but you're like, dang, it's still going. That's because all the animation people. Wow. Right. It's a lot of different steps that has to go. Somebody has to think of the idea, and somebody has to draw that idea, and somebody has to figure out how that drawing moves, and then somebody has to actually make it move, and then someone has to put the lighting on it. So it's so many different departments that it goes through, and animation takes a really long time. Your typical DreamWorks, Pixar, Disney film, from start to finish can take about 10 years.
Yeah. Now, like a person like myself and possibly many others, we assume that in that long list of credits and names, we don't see us, right? So can you share some of the initiatives that you manage that for our diversity, inclusion, and equality?
Absolutely. So I got my fingers in a lot of different pots and doing a lot of different things all the time. But starting with what I do in my day job, working as a manager, my personal mandate is to find other people with intersections of historically marginalized and underrepresented identities, and those are the people that I want to manage. Those are the people that I want to help uplift and get in front of studio execs and say, you need to listen to what this person has to say. So that's a big thing. When I was at Netflix, I was working in their early career recruiting department, and I have the same personal mandate. I'm looking at people like me who come from those intersections. And so that was when I went from, Netflix was when I went from being a production person to being the person that's doing the hiring.
Right.
And so I was like, oh, I'm the gatekeeper now, right? And I was like, I'm not keeping no gates. I'm just gonna start putting that information out there and telling everybody, hey, here's how you get in. Now I know, and I'm just gonna turn around and give you that information. And so I was doing that, and I started a couple different initiatives at Netflix. One internal one that we called Unlearning, which I'm gonna be turning into a YouTube series soon.
Oh, wow.
But unlearning is the concept of we have to break down what we think we know about how to make animation and really innovate and lean into trying something new. Because the status quo isn't working for us, right? The status quo isn't allowing for us to have characters of color be the heroes without that suddenly being the niche show. You know, like we can have broad appeal while representing people who aren't seen as the default, you know? So that was a initiative that I was really excited about because we were highlighting people who were in the studio already doing that work and showing them off to everybody else in the studio, being like, look, you can do it. It's not hard, right? Because there's a lot of philosophy around DEI and people wanting to do it and having bought in intellectually of like, yes, this is important, I want to do it. But then when push comes to shove, they're like, oh, it's hard, I don't know how to do it, I don't have the money to do it, you know, all these other things. And so this initiative was being like, people are already out here doing it. It's really not that hard. And let me show you in tangible ways what you can be doing.
Yeah, well, thankfully they got you. I mean, I assume it takes somebody with a little bit of passion behind their efforts to really make it happen. So you've been part of several mentorship programs to develop BIPOC talent. You know, what inspired you to take on this role, and what's the impact that's been made so far?
Well, before I wanted to work in animation, I would have told you, like, what I wanted to be when I grew up was a teacher.
Okay.
So being somebody who delivers information and helps other people learn and grow has always been in me. And so, again, as soon as I had the information to be able to hand out to other people, I wanted to make sure that I was doing that. And so, yeah, I volunteer with like 4 different organizations where I am mentoring, and then I do speaking engagements all over where I have presentations that are geared towards like, here are the things recruiters aren't telling you. Like, let me give you the exact formula of what you need to do to get your portfolio noticed. Here's how you reach out to somebody and ask them questions. Here's how you network. And really just making sure that I'm handing people who don't have the privilege of being able to like go to school or have the connections to get that information, I'm gonna make sure that you get that information from me.
Got it. Okay. Now that makes a lot of sense. So combining animation with DEI, I mean, do you believe animation can be used as a tool for social change and representation?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And how is that happening for you?
Well, so if you think about it, right? Every kid watches cartoons, all of them. And that's how we learn what the world is, right? I mean, sure, we're learning stuff in school, sure, we're learning stuff from our parents, but an example that I often give my students is, can you imagine in your brain what the inside of an elevator shaft looks like? Not the car, but the inside of an elevator shaft.
Okay.
Yeah? Have you ever seen in real life the inside of an elevator shaft? I'm assuming you're not an elevator tech.
No, I'm not an elevator tech.
Right, so you probably haven't actually seen
I haven't seen it, no.
Right, so why do you know that? Because of media.
Right.
There are things that we think we know, and that's all because of what we've consumed, the content we've consumed. And kids, the content they're consuming is by and large animated. So now we have to think back to bias, unconscious bias.
There you go.
Right?
Yeah.
That everybody's got it. It exists. If you're not actively working to deconstruct that, it's there. Right? You can't not have it. So we as adults, people who are making the content, we're putting our unconscious bias into that content and then feeding that to our kids and teaching that. That's what's raising our kids. That's what's teaching them. And so now they're learning these unconscious biases because we didn't do the work of breaking them down. And we're just keep continuing that cycle, right?
Interesting. So I got to follow up to that.
Yeah.
So, like, is there a concern around AI impacting animation and then those biases being shared through automated generated bias, right? Coming from someone else who's not part of our culture, but presenting our culture with their biases included and through animation. Is that a concern? And if so, can you share that with our audience?
Yeah, that's definitely a concern because AI is not generative, right? AI is only creating recreating what's been created before.
Right.
And so what's been created before is all these biases I was just talking about, all that stuff that we're putting into our content. And so it's just rehashing that. And that's why AI tends to be like super racist and misogynist all the time, because that's the content we're giving it. And so, yes, if we just rely on that to continue to create content, then we're just continuing that cycle of unconscious bias. And it's really going to take a human brain with intention to break that cycle.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, and they would, possibly, if those creations came to fruition, we would possibly need an ethics committee with someone like yourself to say, hey, this isn't okay. And do they have those kind of committees to manage how the biases get out to the audience?
Not really, no. There's consultants. So sometimes studios will bring in consultants, especially if they're doing something that's based off of a particular lived experience that might not be the experience of the majority of people working on the property. And then, you have your DEI specialists who have been brought into all of these different studios. But with the turn in the economy and the strikes and how drastically it's impacted the entertainment industry, a lot of those DEI initiatives and those DEI positions are actually being cut. And so for people who control the bottom line, for people who are looking at the budget and running the numbers, they're like, oh, well, that's superfluous. That's easy to get rid of. But what that means is that you don't have an ethics committee. You don't have a consultant. You don't have somebody who's sitting there being like, hold up a second. You're about to offend a whole subgroup of people who happen to not be in this room right now, but they're definitely going to be watching.
Yeah. I saw something recently that I felt that way about an animated cartoon that just came out.
I feel like I know which one we're talking about.
Yeah.
Is it a reboot?
Yeah. All right, well, we're going to talk about it. So recently there was a reboot of Good Times. And everything Good Times was to us as kids, it spoke to struggle, but it spoke to resilience. It spoke to family. It spoke to overcoming. It spoke to, bringing the community up and going beyond your challenges, right? Keeping my head above water.
That's what Good Times meant.
Right.
Yeah.
Temporary layoffs, right? It wasn't an everlasting thing. So I only got through the first episode of the animation, and then I was just on my phone kind of like staring. I was listening. And I was a little disappointed that there was a shootout in both of the first two episodes. And I'm like, this is not the Good Times I remember. So I've seen a lot of the what's been spoken about in the news. Like, what are your thoughts around that? And then I saw who was involved, right? I read some of the names and the producers and directors and such. And it's like, how did that happen? Like, when those kind of things happen, how does that happen when it doesn't represent us well or it doesn't follow the reboot well?
Yeah.
I know that was a lot, but
no, let's get into it.
All right.
I also was really disappointed. I have not seen it yet.
Okay.
I don't know that I'm gonna watch it.
You should watch it so you at least have an opinion that,
That's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
right,
So I can formulate my own opinion.
There you go.
Yeah. When I first saw the trailer for it, I hoped that was just like the marketing team getting it wrong. But now hearing from you talking about the actual content, maybe that's not the case. But how something like this happens is an exec somewhere or a creator somewhere gets this brilliant idea, and then a bunch of hands go into that pot to make sure that this brilliant idea is going to be profitable, right? And everybody has a different vision of what that means. And so you often get a situation where there's just too many cooks in the kitchen. And then we have to think about the fact that, like, in the hierarchy pyramid of any studio, at the bottom levels, because of all these DEI hiring initiatives, we've got a good diverse group of people. But the higher you get up in the rank of people who have the decision-making powers, the whiter and the maler it gets. So the people who are making that final decision are people who don't understand the heart of the original Good Times. They're probably people who never watched the original Good Times, right? And so what they're thinking is, with their biased brain of, like, what is the Black experience, right?
Yeah.
And somebody who doesn't live the Black experience, they think of the Black experience as being shootouts and cookouts, you know? And so that's what we get.
It was very disheartening. I don't know if they reached out to the original cast members to kind of get their take on it.
Definitely
They
not.
probably didn't, but I remember seeing some articles where they spoke to it. They were disappointed. The audience was disappointed. It just didn't show us in a good light. And because, that was the 70s, we've moved, we're 40, 50 years later, we've moved so far from it, and we should be able to show that evolution and it still be considered good times, right? And still show the struggle that we still have today and today. And it
Right, like
doesn't do that.
you can have them living in the projects.
There you go.
Right, like
Yeah.
you can have them trying to make ends meet with systemic oppression.
Right.
Right, and then show them still being a happy, loving, well-adjusted family. That's the real Black story,
Yes.
right? Of that, there are all of these things that are outside of our control that are put upon us, that's keeping us down. But we're people of resiliency. And we're people of love and community, and that's how we continue to survive and even thrive in a system that's made specifically to oppress us.
That's right. That's right. What challenges have you faced in advocating for DEI in your industry?
I spent the first 10 years of my career being the angry Black woman, and I didn't want to be. I wasn't trying to be. But because I was willing to speak up and speak out, that label was constantly put on me, So if I raised any kind of issue about anything, whether it was legitimate or not, I was just written off as the angry Black woman. And it took me a while. I spent probably about 5 years trying to not be that and trying to play the political, the political correctness game. And at a certain point, probably like when I hit my 30s, I realized there was nothing I was gonna do. Right? Like, that was just what they were gonna think of me, and nothing I was gonna do was gonna stop that. And so why am I trying? Let me just live my truth and get the things done that I know need to be done.
Say that. That's what
Yeah.
I'm talking about. Very good. Yeah. So let me ask you, does an app like Midjourney, concern you?
Not yet,
Not yet?
but
What would be concerning about Midjourney?
I think as the generative AI starts to get good enough that it's indistinguishable. Like right now, maybe like the layperson can't tell if something is AI generated, but an artist, somebody who works in that field, they can see it. Like I can spot it a mile away, right? And so when we get to a point where we can't spot that difference, that's when I'm going to start to get worried. What I am worried about now is the fact that you have these studio execs that are seeing dollar signs, right? And they're like, oh, I can pay artists less and use this to get me half of the way there.
Right.
And right now there's a lot of resistance in the industry from the artists, the creators being like, no, you can't take our jobs away from us. And I'm like, I wholeheartedly agree with that sentiment, but I also know the business side of things. And I know that the studio execs don't care. They don't care about artistic integrity. They don't care about creative vision. They care about money, the bottom line, right? And so we have to learn to embrace and utilize these AI things like Midjourney, OpenAI, how to utilize them to further what we're doing. Because computers can't create. Like I said before, they can only regurgitate what's been done before. In a new way, sure, but it's not innovative. Only humans can create. Only humans can be innovative.
Yes.
So we're never going to be obsolete.
Yeah, love that. What advice do you have for aspiring animators out there with all that said? Like, how are you, especially the ones from underrepresented communities, like what advice do you have for them? Like, I want to get into this, but am I going to lose my job? What's your thoughts there?
You're not going to lose your job. You're not going to lose your job. Animation's not going anywhere, right? Like we said, this is how we raise our kids. Mm-hmm. Animation is as old as film itself. Animation is older than film, right? Like we knew how to draw and in sequence and bring those to life before we knew how to take enough photos of something in sequence and bring it to life, right? Like the technology started with animation. And so it's not going anywhere. So absolutely, if this is a field that you want to get into, there is space for you, and we need people who have ideas that are different. And if you're just starting out, you gotta first and foremost draw. Yeah, okay. Draw all day, every day. Now, I have worked in the animation industry for 10 years, and I am a terrible drawer. But it's where you do need to start, right? And then the second thing is start getting out there and getting to be a part of the community, networking. And I don't mean networking as in like, you put on a suit and you hand off your business card to somebody. But networking in that you're building community, you're finding your peers, you're finding people who can be mentors to you. The animation industry is small, and so we're real close, and just plugging yourself into that.
So what does the animation industry need to do to evolve further with the diversity and inclusion?
We need to stop looking at it as extra, like icing on the cake. It is the cake. It is one of the fundamental ingredients, right? That the status quo in our society is not the global majority, but the animation industry or the American entertainment industry is a global industry. Our stuff goes everywhere, right? And so if we keep thinking that white, straight, Christian male is the default, we're slowly going to be more and more isolatory to everybody else who's consuming this content. So it's really about finding a way to unlearn what we think we know about how to make content and really lean into authentic storytelling from different perspectives. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Like, let me put it to you this way. Sorry, I cut you off.
Go for it.
Any and every person of color grew up having to watch content and read content and listen to content about that white, straight Christian male. Like the amount of books I read as a little kid about a white boy and his dog, like right. That's just what it is. But you still find a way to connect.
Yes.
Because stories are universal. Even if that person doesn't look like me or act like me, I can still find a way to connect to it. But the privileged class, white, straight, Christian people, they never had to exercise that muscle. They've always been represented. Yeah. And so when there's something that's not about them, they're like, oh, well, I can't connect to that just offhand. And so I want to flip the script and be like, yeah, you can, because all of us have been doing it for forever.
I love that. That's what's up. So, I mean, it seems like you keep yourself busy.
Yes.
And you wear a lot of hats and you have several roles. Like, how do you balance that with the passionate work that you're doing outside of the animation industry?
I find it easy to balance because it's what fills my bucket. It's not draining, it fuels me. Mm-hmm. So I have my day job as a talent manager where I'm championing artists in the studio system. Then I have my side hustle as a teacher where I'm teaching at the university level.
Oh, okay.
And giving people the information. I'm talking about the animation activism, that we've been talking about. I'm also teaching vocational classes of like, here's the cheat code, how to get a job, And so that also, fills my bucket, fuels me. And then I have all my volunteer mentor work, speaking engagements, things like that, which is just more of an extension of the same. Yeah. So it's all doing the same thing, and it all feeds me and fuels me, so it doesn't feel like work.
Yeah, and if you don't mind me asking, like, where do you teach at, where some of the audience members who might be interested in taking your class?
Yeah, so I currently teach at Loyola Marymount University, which is also my alma mater.
Okay.
And then I also teach at Cal State Long Beach. And in the summers, I teach online through a website called, I teach online through Project City TV, which is run by Rad Seacrest, who's a creator, content creator and showrunner in the animation industry.
Very cool, very cool. So what do you believe are some of the common misconceptions about the animation industry, especially as it centers around underrepresented talent?
Yeah, I think the biggest thorn in my side and the side of anybody who works in animation is the thought that animation is less than, is secondary to live action. There's kind of this second-class citizen feel towards animation, and it's thought of as just for kids. And the fact of the matter is that animation is not a genre, it's a medium, right? It's not a kind of film, it's a way to make film. But we can do the same things that live action can do and more, right? Because the live action things that you're looking at, half of that shit is animated anyway. You just don't even know, right? And so it's like we need to stop pigeonholing it into this space and allowing animation artists to flourish. And I think the Spider-Verse movies are starting to do that, are starting to kind of bridge that gap and tell people like, no, we can tell adult stories, we can tell drama, we can show heart in animated content. It doesn't have to just be like, oh, that's the thing that the kids watch.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah, now, for me, I would almost prefer working on an animation, like being like a voiceover for a character, because you almost got to come up with the tone and the voice for it, because the animation's created. Like I'm assuming you have to watch it and then come back and say, all right, this is how I would deliver. Like what goes first?
It's actually the opposite.
It's the opposite?
Yeah, the voice actor goes first, and then the animator uses that to inform their...
That's interesting. So how do you know what kind of energy to get? Well, I guess that just comes with...
That comes with the director. Right. It also comes from... Like the script and the storyboard has already been made, so you have an idea of what it looks like. But what's hard about voiceover artistry is that when you go to acting school and you learn to act, you learn to emote with your whole body, right? And put everything into it. And then for voiceover, it's like, okay, you're gonna sit still, but your voice has to convey all of that.
All the energy.
Has to do everything that your body would do, put that into your vocal performance.
That sounds harder.
It is.
Okay.
It is. Right. And not everybody can do it.
I've seen some really good adult cartoons.
Yeah.
I actually still watch South Park. I think it's hilarious. but oftentimes when I see something like that, speaking to the DEI piece, like when I see maybe a character of color, but their voice is not a character of color.
I hate that.
Like, okay, all right, I was just gonna ask, like, how do you feel about that?
I have a whole 3-hour lecture on that exact topic and about how it's not okay. Especially if you have a character, because sometimes in animation you have characters that don't have a race, right? It's like that, that's the blue guy, that's the alien, that's the animal, whatever. But if you have a character that has a race, whether it is physically shown or it's just clearly like within the character, even if they don't physically look like that, the person who's playing it should match that, because otherwise you're just taking work away from talented artists of color to say, oh, well, let me just get this white person to do it.
Right. So let me ask you, why don't you believe that we're seeing more shows, animated shows, after the success of Boondocks, Proud Family? Like, where was the follow-up from those shows that we had in our on television?
Unfortunately, that things that are targeted at the Black experience are seen as Black shows to a Black audience, right? And population-wise, we're a small part of the population, and so it's seen as niche. Once it's not about the default person, and it's something that you have to work a little bit harder to kind of connect with, it's just assumed that people aren't connecting with. And what's crazy is that Boondocks, Proud Family, these shows are huge. Everybody loves them. They're beloved. But the people at the top who are making the decisions on what gets greenlit or not are like, I can't connect to that. So clearly no one else can connect to that. And like, nah, bro, people love it.
And, I think of a show like, how do we get an animated version of Abbott Elementary? Right, that had a really good balance between getting everybody's attention, and of course it's won all these awards, but where's the animated version that tells our stories like that? So yeah, that's powerful. Appreciate that. And what are you actually watching now?
Ooh, okay. So I just finished watching Blue-Eyed Samurai on Netflix, which is an adult animated drama that is like beautiful to look at, absolutely stunning, but also absolutely amazing storytelling.
Yeah.
I am obsessed. So if you haven't watched it,
Hadn't even heard of it.
definitely check it out. Netflix,
Okay.
Blue-Eyed Samurai.
Blue-Eyed Samurai.
Yeah, it's about a mixed race, like half white, half Japanese person during a time when Japan, this is true, Japan closed its borders to all foreigners and said, like, we see those colonizers coming from a mile away. We're going to close down our borders and preserve our culture. And so you have this mixed race person who's trying to find out which of the 4 remaining white men in Japan are her father.
That's interesting. I think I've seen it kind of like, have you watched kind of on the home screen, but I never clicked on it. So
yeah, check it out. It's real good.
I'm going to have to go ahead and watch that.
Yeah. One of my favorite all-time shows has to be Steven Universe, which is a kids animated show, but it is so sophisticated, really interesting, and is really really seeped in the queer experience. And so as a Black queer woman, that really spoke to me.
Okay. Yeah. So would you say that, for those in the industry, how important is networking and community building to those who want to get into the industry? And if so, what are the opportunities out there? Like, where do they need to go to find out more about how to get into this industry?
Yeah, networking is the most important thing. I think it's even more important than having a strong portfolio or resume or whatever. It's really about who you know, because it's the entertainment industry. And so, unfortunately, it's about who you know. But like I said, animation industry is small and we're tight knit and we got community. And so like the internet is going to be your best place to start. Social media, finding place like Black and Animated, Rise Up Animation, Latinx in Animation, Asians in Animation. There's SAVA, which is South Asians in Visual Arts. Like there's all of these community groups that are based on underrepresented groups of people who want to or are currently working in the animation industry. And so joining that community is an amazing place to start.
Got it. I've enjoyed this conversation. I could probably talk about cartoons all day.
Me too.
I myself want to see a reboot of Fat Albert. Yeah, I was really sad when it went off. So as a kid, so that was rough for me.
That's a little bit before my time, but I would love to see it.
So you telling my age. But how about this? Like, how can our audience members find out more about the work that you're doing and everything?
Absolutely. Yeah, I am at SamG_Anim on all platforms. So that's SAM, the letter G _ANIM, as in the first half of animation. And especially on my TikTok, I'm answering questions about how to, best break into the animation industry. And then my Instagram and my LinkedIn, I'm always sharing opportunities and events and things like that for people who are looking to break in.
All right, that's excellent. So yeah, we want to thank you for coming on the BlerdOut show.
Thank you for having
sharing
me.
your experience with us.
Absolutely.
This is excellent. And for the audience members, want to make sure you follow Sam Goff on social media. Follow her on TikTok because she answers questions about things related to the animation industry. And next time you're looking for a way to learn more about the animation industry and DEI, make sure you check out Sam Goff. This is Terrence Southern, the BlerdOut podcast. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
confidence, yeah. It really shouldn't be no arguments, cause you're now viewing the greatest of all time. Saying